guys, why is the assault bike so hard part 2? I'm wearing my nerd glasses because this is gonna get nerdy. In the first video we talk about the physics of the thing, and in this second video we're gonna talk about the physiology of the thing. So on the first thing it was about that machine and what are the forces needed to make it work, and in this work we're gonna be talking about this machine and how does this machine produces the forces needed to move the bike. Good, so the underlying question here is, how does the body turn oxygen from the air and nutrients from food into energy or into force? And so that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna give you a very fast crash course into energy pathways. Did you see that, Cersei? Did you see that, Cersei? Anyhow, so energy pathways are the biological processes that happen in the body to turn, as I said, oxygen and nutrients into energy, into force. We have a simplified model for that is getting obsolete nowadays. You never heard that here, but anyhow, I'm gonna present you that model. I know this model has been presented to you probably if you're watching this video before, but I think it's often misexplained in several ways, and so I want to give an explanation here that I hope serves not only the purpose of understanding the assault bike, but also to explain that model a little bit better. So let's go right into the things. So there are three main pathways. There are more than this, but there are three main. And so let's go to the first of them. So the first pathway is the phosphagen pathway. So imagine I was contracting a muscle, and I'm gonna do the universal muscle contraction that is like, I wish my bicep was bigger so it could be more impressive. But anyhow, so as soon as I contract the muscle, the first thing that happens is the neurons of the brain send message to the muscle fibers to contract, and the energy that is used by the muscle fibers comes from turning a molecule in the muscle that is called the creatine phosphate molecule into energy. So the muscle contracts by turning that into energy. That's the first thing that happens. At the same time though, the second thing that is happening is that the muscle also uses glycogen that also lives in the muscle. Both creatine phosphate and glycogen are in the muscle, and the muscle takes those two and turns it into energy. What happens and what you have to keep in mind is that creatine phosphate is consumed really fast, and we don't have a lot of it. It is fast, so the muscle will be able to contract really fast and will create a lot of force, but it dies fast. Like there's not a lot of it, so the body has to replenish that. It dies really fast. With glycogen, there's a little bit more than phosphate creatine, so the muscle can use that system for a little bit longer, but it also dies. And this third system that is also happening as soon as I start contracting this muscle here is the aerobic system, and that system is the system that is like working all the time. But they're all working all the time, but it's the main system in the sense that it's the one turning the oxygen in and fat and carbs that live in our blood, they're not in the muscle, into energy, right? And so that, keep in mind that if we don't inhale oxygen, we die. So that's how important the aerobic system is. Much more important than food. It's important to know how to breathe. That's a little asterisk there, but let's move forward. So the three systems are working at all times. So as soon as I contract, creatine phosphate, glycogen are turned into muscle, are turned into movement, into contraction. If I keep contracting or increase the force needed to contract, like let's say I start using a dumbbell, the heavier the dumbbell, the more energy that I have to produce faster, the more the creatine and the glycogen resources are gonna be needed, and the more I'm gonna diminish them. And so as soon as that happens, those muscles, those systems start telling to the aerobic system hey dude, kick in. And by kick in, what the aerobic system does is the aerobic system is the one that is blowing the flood into the system, keeping all the other systems of the body, all the other metabolic processes alive, all the processes that will in turn replenish creatine phosphate and glycogen to the muscle, right? And so any human movement is always going to be a balance of these three systems, right? Good. Now, because of the nature of the thing, you usually understand them as, anaerobic, anaerobic. So, the aerobic is just the aerobic system, and it's called aerobic from air because it uses oxygen. And the other two, the anaerobic systems, only use what is in the muscles. They don't use oxygen. The symbols that you see there, the first one is the symbol for glucose, which is the main compound that the muscle will use, sugar basically. And the second is the scooper for the creatine that bros use in their shakes in the morning, because there is this belief with some good evidence actually that like if you don't inhale it. If you consume creatine, that creatine will go into the muscle and it will be ready there, so you can control harder and have more growth and then have more muscle. That's why I have that symbol there. Good. Few things that you need to take into account and that you have to keep in mind here is that the following. So first, the anaerobic systems can create a lot of force fast, and the more force you need to produce fast, the more we're gonna target those anaerobic systems, the more creatine and glycogen they're gonna be spent, right? And the more the aerobic system is gonna have to be there behind to replenish those muscles, right? So they have high rates of force production, but they die fast, and they need to be replaced by the aerobic system. The second part is here, the aerobic system, and it has low rate of force production because it's low, so it's not going to contract the muscles really hard, and also because its main system is to actually keep your body working all the other functions, and so that system is not going to kick in right away. It does not die unless you die, kind of, and it only it only needs itself to live. That is kind of a very imprecise statement, but it's important to kind of see how the aerobic system breeds the other ones. Good. So where is this nice little model misexplained? Well, most people believe that what you have is that the aerobic system is used for the aerobic system is used for cardio stuff, so anything that is a run, like a bike or whatever, and the anaerobic system is for lifting weights and sprinting. And that is just because we like to think about movement like that. It's just how our brain works, but that is not very accurate. It is not very representative. There's some truth to that, of course, but it's very simplistic and it doesn't work. So let's think about a runner. So a running is both an anaerobic and anaerobic activity. Both systems are always working. So let's say we're having a jog, easy jog. If I'm having an easy jog, my cadence is not very big. It's gonna be 120 steps per minute, 150. I'm just jogging. And I don't have to contract the muscles really hard, right? I don't have to produce a lot of force. So the anaerobic systems are not working really hard. What happens that then the aerobic system doesn't have to kick in really hard, right? Because there's no need to replenish those anaerobic storages, and everything is kind of relaxed. What happens as soon as I start increasing the pace? So if I start to increase the pace, the muscles have to contract faster. I have to move the leg faster. If you're let's do a little bit of a step here, parenthesis here. You could also say if you want to run faster, you just lean forward. And if you've been running with me, you know this is to be true. But anyhow, let's move forward. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be very funny right now and I'm failing, but it's alright. You can laugh at me. Anyhow, so if you want to go faster, you have to move those legs faster, which means that the muscle is going to have to contract more. Because of that, it has to produce more force, so it's going to be more anaerobically tasked. And so the aerobic system is going to have to kick in to replenish those muscles, to also bring energy to the system, and you're gonna have to breathe more, and you're gonna have to work more. So if you run faster, they're both gonna still be working. It's still gonna be and it's actually gonna be a little bit more of an anaerobic dominant. What happens that if I run so fast so that the force production goes so high so that I'm killing the legs, the muscles are dying, the aerobic system is not fast enough to help the anaerobic system survive. And so what happens there is, like, imagine a 100-meter sprint, I will go all out. As soon as the 100-meter sprint is done, my aerobic system is not fast enough to keep the anaerobic system needed, like the force production needed, the other system going, and so I'm naturally gonna slow down, right? So I'm just replenishing my creatine phosphate and my glycogen storage so hard so that my system, the blood needed to bring nutrients into the muscle is not fast enough. So that's one of the things that you have to keep in mind, that like one of the tasks of the aerobic system is to keep bringing blood into the muscles with the nutrients that it needs, right? And that takes energy, and that's part of the aerobic system, to pump that blood, right? And so that's why I need, like, when I'm like lifting weights really heavy, I'm gonna breathe really hard because the aerobic system is kicking in. But sometimes the anaerobic demands, the force production demands, are so high that no matter how hard I breathe, there's not enough blood, and that's it. So that's physiology 101. And now let's move to the bike. Hey guys, we're back on the bike. So, few things here. Remember that the main thing we said last time was that the physics of this thing are important because there's one main quality here, and is that the resistance of the bike is fixed and is high. What does that mean physiologically? That my muscles are gonna have to produce a lot of force fast, and that force is gonna be constant. What does that mean? That my anaerobic systems are gonna be, while I'm pedaling, they're gonna be hit hard, right? And because that force is constant, I'm gonna be tasking them really hard. That's gonna deplete them, and if my aerobic system, if my breathing is not fast enough, I'm not gonna be replenish them. And so what's gonna happen is that I'm gonna feel exhausted, I'm gonna feel pukey, right? Which is when the anaerobic system cannot do anything, like cannot produce any more energy. The aerobic system is in overload trying to get the nutrients there, but it's not fast enough, and I'm gonna die. You know what happens. Good. If you were in a road bike, you know what we would do. We would lower the gear so there's less resistance, the movement is less anaerobic, so the aerobic systems have better time to catch up, right? Like if I decrease the force that I have to create with the legs, the aerobic system is gonna have an easier time to replenish the anaerobic systems, and everything is gonna work. We don't have gears here, and so I'm not gonna be able to do that. Good. On top of that, what you need to realize is that for the aerobic systems to be very efficient, there needs to be enough blood flow going, right? So let's say I'm biking here, and my anaerobic systems, the ones that are producing all the force, are like dying, and they're screaming. They're saying, lungs, bring me my sugar and my phosphate creatine so that I can keep working. And the aerobic system is going, but in order for the blood to get to those muscles, I would need to move those legs faster, because since they are like moving slow and they're contracted, the blood is not getting there, right? So if my RPM is very low, I'm like dying even more, like I'm killing those legs even more. Good. So this is where road cyclists are gonna help us a lot. So what can we learn from road cyclists? So first, couple of things. They use nerdier glasses. Second thing, they use silly hats. And third thing is that Colombian cyclists are really good. Not all Colombians are good cyclists. This one is not, but they're very good Colombian cyclists. Anyhow, so for the purpose of our discussion, imagine you're on the road and you're in a very steep ascent and the angle is fixed. So imagine you're there and you're on your road bike and you're biking there. That will mimic the assault bike very well. What happens on the road that doesn't happen on the assault? On the assault, you can slow down all the way down and you don't fall. On the road, if you slow down too much, you crash. Like your bike, you have to keep going at a speed, right? Like you cannot just like slow down too much. So respect those cyclists because that is hard. Anyhow, the cool thing about road cycling is like what a cyclist will do there is will try to balance the demands of the aerobic system with the demands of the anaerobic system. So they're gonna try to maximize how hard can I go, how hard do I have to push with the pedals, but without burning the muscles or without burning the heart. And they know that most cyclists, this varies of course from cyclist to cyclist, and like certain professionals like work differently, but in general they know that like a cadence, a revolution per minute of 80 to 100 or 90 to 110 is gonna be able to sustain the anaerobic system well. What does that mean? That means that if you are at between 80 to 100 revolutions per minute, RPMs, your legs are gonna move fast enough so that the aerobic system can replenish the anaerobic system. Good. So what would you do as a road cyclist in that steep curve, in that steep ascent? You will lower the gears so that like you can keep that cadence, keep the revolutions per minute, and you can sustain the anaerobic output, right? Like so you will like be able to push hard at a wattage. That will be the metric that they will be seeing that they can sustain, right? If they start like if the anaerobic system, if the legs start dying, they will lower the gears to keep the cadence up. Right? And so the beauty of that sport is that you can be really just assessing the relationship between anaerobic and aerobic system all the time. And it's that beautiful balance between the two. Right? And so again, what you will do is like, okay, I'm gonna keep my cadence at a place in which the aerobic system can flow blood into the legs to keep them alive, and I'm gonna have a gear that allows me to like push hard and fast on the apply enough force on the pedals, but not too much. And once this force required starts to sustain that RPM starts being too much, I change the gear, right? That's what road cyclists do, and that's what we can learn. And the most important thing that we can learn from them is that the optimal cadence so that the aerobic system can sustain the anaerobic system are usually 80 to 100. Again, trained individuals and like professional athletes might change these numbers, and maybe if you're a cyclist that also might change, but in general we know that those RPMs are optimal. Okay, so let's try to put it all together now. So what we know is that in the assault bike, if you have ridden an assault bike, in order to get to cadences that are optimal, 80, 190, you have to pedal super hard. So your anaerobic systems are super tasked, right? Like they're like destroyed. And so you cannot ride at optimal cadences for a prolonged period of time. You have to go a little bit lower, 70, 60. The more fit you are and the more anaerobic you are, the higher cadences you're gonna be able to sustain, and the more aerobic the activity can be, and that's gonna actually benefit you very much. But for most of us, we don't have the capacity to have that high anaerobic output, and so we're not gonna keep higher cadences, and so it's just gonna compound on us really hard, right? And so what happens is like, let's say you're like in the assault bike at 55 RPMs, you're pushing hard because the force required to push is hard, is fixed and is high, but also the cadence is low enough so that like your aerobic system is working really hard but not getting much out of that work, right? Like so the assault bike is the opposite of a road bike. It's designed so that like everything is working suboptimally, right? Like the aerobic system is in a place in which gets a lot of work and not too much output, a lot of input, not too much output, and the anaerobic system is always hit hard, right? Which is that sustained anaerobic output is really hard, and so it's designed so that like everything about you works wrong, right? Like that's why it's so hard. So let me give you an example. So you're probably in your gym or you have seen the person that is like really good, or that the only way they can ride the assault bike is like by going all out for a second and then down. Good. So this is people that have a very big imbalance between their anaerobic system and their aerobic system. right? So this is people that like probably the phosphagen path is very strong, and then the glycotic path and the oxygen path are very, very weak. And so they will be go to a very high power outburst, and the aerobic system is so poor that even at cadences of 40 and 50, they cannot replenish the anaerobic systems. They're just not enough, and so they have to slow down completely and they go back again, right? It's just a very big imbalance, and those like if you're in that case, what you have to really do is to row or go to another machine in which you can change the relationship a little bit more. The bike is not gonna build you that much. Good. The other case that you might see is the people that actually cannot have a big power output, right? And so that tells you that their anaerobic capacity per se is a little bit off. Like they rely too much on the aerobic systems, and so for them actually the bike is a great tool. Good. The last consideration that you have to keep in mind is that apart from the bike being designed to be awful in areas way possible, if you go back to your road cycling example in which you're in a steep ascent, on the road when you're on a road bike, what will happen if you slow down too much is that you have to just jump off the bike and walk, right? Like you cannot just keep going. On the assault bike, you can't keep going. So you will slow down and keep slowing down, and you're still on the ascent. So if you're biking 2 miles on the assault bike, you're gonna still bike 2 miles, and if you slow down, you're just gonna move very slow, and the ascent is the same steepness, and you're just gonna stay there, right? And so that's another thing that I can think it can help you understand why this sucks so bad. Anyhow, in the next video we'll talk about the biomechanics of the thing. Still a little bit of physiology, but mostly biomechanics. We're gonna like talk about like the handles and how our body interacts with the machine itself, and that will talk more about the specificity of the bike, because everything that I have said today will apply to any static bike in which you crank up the resistance, right? Like this is not specific of the bike, of the assault bike, and I don't want you to get that. But in our next part we'll talk a little bit about the specificity of the assault bike in terms of the handles, in terms of your body with respect to that machine, and understanding that better will also help you understand why it sucks so bad. And the last thing that we'll talk about on that video is also like how all these ideas can translate into training methodologies for you, depending on who you are and what you want. And hopefully that will be also very interesting. Anyhow, I'll see you 2 weeks from now, or actually, this is the interwebs. You might be seeing these 3 videos one after the other. I don't know. So I'll see you when I see you.